What is it, RotoBallers? It is week 17. That means time for the final start sit of the season because it's a fantasy championship for most of you out there. And then week 18, first time we'll have a week 18 in any NFL season. Who knows what that will bring? This has been a crazy enough season. Who knows what the final week will look like? But let's focus on this week. You need to make the right decision to win the championship. So let's start with a couple of guys I think might help you do that. These are my must start running backs and a couple of must sits for week 17. So let's start with the most valuable penny that you might ever see. That's Rashaad Penny. Now, I know it's hard to trust a guy who has missed the better part of the last couple of years. He's only showed up a couple of times this season. So, we don't want to let recency bias get the best of us. But look at the numbers. In the last 3 games, right, Rashaad Penny has played. 2 of those 3 games, he's gone over 120 yards on the ground. And the one that he didn't, it's because he got banged up, predictably, and left the game early. I know it's always a risk. And here's the thing. Let's just get that out of the way with. We can never guarantee that Penny is going to make it through an entire game. All right. He's definitely never made it through an entire season. So there's always that chance. But you know what? That's any running back these days, right? So many guys that you need. I mean, you shouldn't need to look like a guy like Penny to even fill in a running back spot, but that's the state of the position. So, yeah, there's risk everywhere. All right. So, you got to take a chance, especially if you need someone to plug in there. The matchup is so good. It's Detroit. Yes, they've been a little bit better defensively over the last few weeks. It's still a smash spot for him. So, he's averaging 5.5 yards per carry on the season. Ever since he's actually come back and played, and when he's on the field, he's been really good. There's no competition for touches there. Alex Collins, I don't even know if he still exists. Okay, he does. But he's been banged up, and he's not a threat. The other guys who mix in there, DJ Dallas, Travis Homer, no worries. Those are only guys who are in there once in a while, or if Penny gets hurt. So you definitely need to take the chance. It is worth it. The ceiling for him is so high, you absolutely have to give him a shot and just cross your fingers and hope that he makes it through the game. All right, so Clyde Edwards-Helaire did not make it through last week's game. He's not going to suit up this week. That means Darrel Williams is going to have the majority of the touches, and that is definitely something that you need to think about because when Clyde Edwards-Helaire has been out this season for 5 games, Darrel Williams' PPR points have more than doubled. From 7.5 points when he's splitting time with Edwards-Helaire to 17.8 PPR points. That is RB2 caliber. That's almost RB1 caliber, really. So you know that he's a guy you have to keep in there. The touchdown upside is always there. The Chiefs' offense is back on track, looking like we expected it to. They've scored over 34 points a game in the last 3. That Super Bowl hangover, I guess they've recovered. So just in time for New Year's, right? Darrel Williams is a guy you absolutely have to start. It's not necessarily a plus matchup. The Bengals defense has been solid, but it's not going to, shut down this Chiefs offense. So Darrel Williams is a guy, so much upside, you definitely have to keep him in there too. What about Michael Carter? This is an interesting one. It's hard for me to go so far as to say must start, but again, given all the different players you have to choose from, I really think his upside is among the best to at least put him in RB2 territory. So here's the thing. The Jets are not good. The Jets running game has not been good. Even Carter himself, he had a couple of nice games, but for most of the season as a rusher, he hasn't been that great. So now you're talking about a Tampa Bay team that of course has one of the better defenses in the league, but in terms of rushing defense and yards allowed to running back specifically, they are, second best in terms of limiting running back production. So this would seem like a spot to sit Carter. But no, here's a couple of things in his favor. First of all, just today we learned Tevin Coleman not going to play, right? He's been placed in the COVID list. So once again, 0 competition for touches. I'm pretty sure you don't have to worry about Ty Johnson anymore. And then Tampa Bay, so even though they're good defensively, against running backs on the ground because of that formidable D-line, they've allowed the second most receptions to running backs. And what we know about Carter is when he first kind of stepped on the fantasy scene in terms of being productive, it was as a receiver, not so much as a rusher. He had a game with 9 catches. He had a game with 8 catches. This is a game I guarantee he will get at least 5 to 6 receptions because, by the way, instead of Tevin Coleman, besides Tevin Coleman just being out, Elijah Moore doesn't look like he'll come back because he hasn't been practicing all week. We already know Corey Davis out for the season. We already know Jamison Crowder missed last week. Doesn't look like he'll play this week either. They have nobody to throw to. Okay, so Carter by default is going to be probably the leading rusher and receiver for this team. So you got to chase the volume when it comes to running backs. Look for that opportunity. I think Carter's going to get it. So even though on the surface, on paper, it doesn't look like a great matchup, actually game script will work in his favor quite a bit. The opposite goes for Cordarrelle Patterson. I know we love the story. You know, he was a fantasy stud for almost half the season, and now it's over. Okay, Patterson, we have to admit, he's become basically touchdown dependent. Ever since they decided, you know what, he's a little too good, let's kind of bottle him up and only use him as a running back. Because, of course, why would you want to take a former receiver and use him out of the backfield and throw to him when it's successful when you can just keep him in the backfield and use him just as a runner? That's pretty brilliant. So over the last 6 games, Patterson has been averaging 1.8 receptions and 10.7 yards through the air. That's right, 10 yards. You know, he had those games where he had 70 yards, 80 yards, 90, 100 yards receiving. No, those days are long over. They're using him strictly as a running back. Oh, and in a committee with Mike Davis, as if Mike Davis has proven anything this year. He hasn't. So all you can hope for at this point for Patterson, who hasn't even been that productive on the ground the last couple of games either, is just falling into the end zone. And now he faces the Buffalo Bills, who, yes, have the second highest DVOA. So this is still one of the best run defenses out there. I mean, if you're in a standard league and you really don't have a better option and you hope for that touchdown, because he is still scoring touchdowns semi-frequently, go for it. Otherwise, I mean, you just can't. Patterson's days are numbered as a fantasy asset. And then my final recommendation is don't drink the Kool-Aid for Rex Burkhead. He had his one monster game that he has once a year. It's over. That was against the Chargers, and I know it surprised everybody because, of course, we thought the Chargers would beat the Texans. We did not think Rex Burkhead would go nuts and run for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns against anybody, much less the Chargers. But let me remind you now that the Chargers have the 4th worst run defense in the league. They've been giving up a lot of yards to running backs all season, really. So it's not anything new, you know, not to that extent, of course, not for a guy like Burkhead, but still, this was a matter of the matchup favoring him and the Chargers just completely letting down. Now going against the 49ers this week, 12th best in terms of a run defense. That's enough of a difference for me to back off of him. And also, Brandon Cooks is going to come back for the Texans. They'll actually have somewhat more of a passing game. They won't have to try to just run with Burkhead. All told, you just have to realize this is a running back that coming into last week, he was averaging 2.8 yards per carry with 1 touchdown on the entire season. And then he comes in and does what he does, basically duplicating his entire season's worth of production in one game. Yeah, that's what you call an outlier. Don't fall for it. Don't play him again. Unlike, just like Patterson, really, unless you're really desperate and you're in a standard league. And in that case, chances of winning the championship don't seem too great. All right. Well, those are my recommendations for Week 17. All I can say is good luck. Check out our updated rankings throughout the weekend and our last-minute news from our award-winning news desk. Here to help you. Hopefully you guys bring home that trophy. All right, good luck.